Good Monday morning, everyone. I listen to the numbers and the words. 4638 ABK 26 ALGMOR 3Y X 2489 RPST OVA L. What meaneth this, O prophet? Thou knowest not, nor shalt thou know ever. There cometh one to follow thee, he shall expound it. I am not the one to follow. But I've heard lots of people try to expound it. And in a sense, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Oh, let's see what it looks like in print. It looks like this. It's from verse 75 and 76 of chapter 2 of the Book of the Law. It's kind of funny. It says, listen to the numbers and the words. It doesn't say listen to the numbers and the letters. It says, listen to the numbers and the words. So the numbers are 4638. But ABK is a word. Well, could be interpreted as a word, or the word ABK. 24 ALGMOR 3Y 3 YX 89 RPSTOVL. Constance likes to say, our peace to you all. Why am I bringing this up? If I'm not the one to follow, and I don't have any kind of theory about that whatsoever, and if I had one, I wouldn't be telling it on Facebook and YouTube. But what I'd like to do this morning, because my good friend, our good friend, to all of us, Jake Stratton Kent, is recovering from a pretty serious health issue, but he's recovering and doing well. And I want us all to shoot him our best healing vibes, and let's get him through this. I had the great pleasure and the honor to introduce a book by Jake, and I included it among the other introductions that I wrote. His book is called The Serpent Tongue, Liber 187, and if you're at all interested in the English Kabbalah, especially based on the magic of Thelema, the Book of the Law, RPSTOVL, and all of that. If you haven't read it, if you haven't bought it, buy it and read it. And I know it makes any author feel good to have people buy his book. So in order to make Jake feel even better than he is starting to feel, buy his book. Anyway, I'm going to read you my introduction to to the Serpent Tongue, Liber 187, which was published, first edition was back in 2011. There may be a certain amount of truth in the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But for this old dog, the English Kabbalah may very well be the most important new trick I will ever learn. I suppose I can't be condemned too severely for taking so long to examine this marvelous spiritual instrument. After all, I've spent the better part of my adult life shunning those centers of pestilence who dared discuss or interpret the contents of Liber al vel Legis, the Book of the Law. I was especially distrustful of the poor souls who, in exchange for a coronation ceremony and the deed to certain real estate in Scotland, were prepared to assume the mantle of spiritual leadership of the world. Indeed, by 1983, my collection of letters from individuals revealing themselves to be the incarnation of Aleister Crowley, or the one to follow, or his child, and that strangely, or the child of somebody's bowels. My collection of letters from them rivaled that of Dr. Regardie. Indeed, shortly before his death, the dear man and I even entertained the idea of pooling our letters and communications in a book we'd call Liber Nuts. We spelled it Kabbalistically N-U-T-Z, though. Okay. The authors of nearly every one of these colorful documents claim to have cracked the code of the Book of the Law, and as proof offered an elaborate explanation of the string of letters, numbers, and letters, words, that began the 76th verse of the second chapter of Liber al vel Legis. 4638 ABK24 ALGMOR 3Y X24 89 RPSTOVAL. For example, the father of one to follow was named Kenneth. The Hebrew word for father being AB, Aleph Bet, it was perfectly obvious that ABK referred to his father, whose address at the time of the nativity of his child, and that strangely, was 4637 Gilmore Street. But owing to phenomena arising from the obliquity of the Earth's axis between 1904 and the date of his birth, the actual coordinates of his birth were actually shifted to just across the street at 4638. What more proof could you want? He asked. I didn't answer, but I did call Regardie and shared the story, and we both laughed like schoolyard bullies. Today, I'm somewhat ashamed of my arrogant dismissals of what I now see as sincere and poignant pleas for spiritual validation from seekers who were desperately trying, far better than I, to apply the complex and colorful mythos of Thelema directly to their own lives. At the time, however, my cynicism hardened with each new revelation, and so did my disdain for these stillborn prophets with their roaring narcissism, delusions of grandeur, defective Hebrew and disjointed gematria, faulty arithmetic, poor command of the English language, and an utter incapacity to grasp the fact that whoever read their letters would immediately conclude they were mad as hatters. Like most thelemites, I did my own share of puttering. In the late 1970s, I took 3 yellow legal pads and determined the numeration for each word of Liber Al. I did this in a very orthodox manner by treating each English letter as its Hebrew counterpart, or counterparts. This was a singularly unsatisfactory or unsatisfying project. I was perpetually frustrated with uncertainty over whether or not this T is a Tav or a Tet, or that X a Tzadi or a Chet, or that O is a Vav or an Oyen. Despair followed frustration when my wife Constance, who hates Kabbalah, continually pummeled me with the obvious fact that Liber Al was not written in Hebrew, so why on earth should the letters of its words be translated into Hebrew? My defense was feeble. For one reason, I explained to her with sweet condescension, not sweet condensation. I dripped. Sweet condescension. Sweet condensation is another thing altogether. Okay, I'll start that again. For one reason, I explained to her with sweet condescension, quote, to see their relationships to significant traditional Kabbalistic words and concepts. And where do these words and concepts come from? She asked, and she knew the answer. She was just being mean. The Bible, mostly, I mumbled. Well, the Bible's not my holy book, and the book of the law doesn't need a Bible to prop it up. Show me a Kabbalah in English that uses the book of the law and not the Bible, she said. Of course she was, and is always right. I eventually abandoned this avenue of research and became, for the most part, contented to appeal exclusively to Crowley's writings for insights and inspiration. As far as exploring the English alphabet, I toyed half-heartedly with Liber Trigrammaton, the same way a child pushes his broccoli around on his plate, but that was it. I did, however, make one pathetic yet remarkably successful foray into Liber Al practical magic. I projected the numbers and letters from chapter 276 upon a chimea of Saul. What did I do with it? I just showed it to you a moment ago, and I've lost it already. Hang on. Have I dropped it? You should never allow your kamea to be dropped. It was that thing I showed you. Here it is. Now, this is a later incarnation of it. This isn't the exact same piece of paper that I'm talking about here. I projected, and I tried to space them. They were actually written in two, as it appeared in his handwritten thing, they appear something like that. But in order to get it into a 6x6 square, I did that with it. Let's see, I projected, okay. I printed it on a gold or a yellow cardstock and laminated it in plastic. Our first test run of this talisman was to see if I could help us find a new place to live. This may not sound like very serious magic, but if you've ever attempted to find a reasonably inexpensive house to lease in Newport Beach, California, then I'm afraid you don't really know the meanings of the word impossible miracle. Unfortunately, this didn't work. It worked, but it didn't work to my satisfaction to get this place here in Sacramento. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Our technique was simplicity itself. We taped the square to the dashboard of our car and drove around the neighborhood where we most desired to live. As rental rates in the new neighborhood were completely out of the price range we could afford, we wisely armed ourselves with a bottle of wine to assure we would not be dissuaded by common sense. Without getting into details that are fascinating to us, but I'm sure of little interest to the reader, I will simply report that in the ensuing 25 years, we have needed to celebrate this ritual 6 times to locate new homes. 7th wasn't a charm. It's always worked to the amazement of our neighbors and friends and to our own immense satisfaction. I mention this magic square not to prove what a clever boy I was or to tout the power inherent in the Book of the Law. I bring it up only to point out the rather sad spiritual state into which I had allowed myself to drift. There I was, a hot-shot thelemite, militantly preached that Liber Al Vel Legis was the revelatory instrument of the age. I studied it daily and supported that study by performing rituals based on its deities and formulae, by reading, memorization, and meditation. I was the best damn Book of the Law thumper in town. But the most practical thing I'd ever done with it was to concoct a crude talisman for house hunting. Hell, why not just get a sun-bleached buffalo bone, scratch a few markings on it with a sharp stone, and hurl it at the moon? Well, maybe I'm being a little hard on myself. The young fool, having neither the wit to see the enormity of his ignorance, nor the good sense to forsake the quest, I eventually grew to be an old fool. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I wasted a minute of my magical education. I may have early on abandoned my tinkering with chapter 2, verse 76, but I did spend the next 25 years or so immersing myself in the words, images, and concepts that form the building blocks of the magnificent edifice that is Thelema. I speak particularly of the treasures to be found in Liber Al Vel Legis and the 13 holy books. What an absolute thrill it is at this rather late point in my magical life to finally get a glimpse of what certainly appears to be the mathematical mortar that unites these great scriptural stones. Please do not think that I'm presuming to speak for anyone other than myself when I voice my comments in this place. I'm not writing as a spokesperson for any of the fine organizations to which I belong and whose kind forbearance suffer my membership. However, as an individual, I cannot hide my personal enthusiasm concerning the English Kabbalah, based upon the ALWHS. That's sort of the code of Jake's English Kabbalah here. ALWAH, etc., progression, and the marvelous work being done by Jake Stratton Kent and others who are continuing to develop and enrich it. They deserve the admiration and thanks of every student of modern magic. Liber 187 is a particularly brilliant example how rituals and exercises can be created from this marvelous structure. After I read it for the first time, I wrote Jake and told him, "It's so clean, it squeaks." It is indeed so clean it squeaks. English words and phrases relating to other English words and phrases, magic words, familiar words that course through the dynamic matrix of a small collection of spiritual literature that I personally hold sacred. Perhaps an old dog can learn a new trick or two. I certainly intend to find out. Again, the book is The Serpent Tongue, or Liber 187. And that's available if you don't have it in your library and are interested at all in an application of the English language and the holy books of Thelema as a source of spiritual Kabbalistic inspiration. Get it, read it, enjoy it, work with it. But sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. Until tomorrow, Jake, get better soon. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.